I am so excited to talk to you today. I have been really looking forward to this interview. Um, can you talk to me about your introduction to sport? I mean, I know that you played softball collegiately, but was it always softball? What did you play growing up? I know that your parents were super into sports.
Mhm. So my dad was a professional baseball player. So softball was going to happen no matter what. I don't really know if I had a chance to really fully decide, but I was the oldest daughter. So it was just me and it's just my little sister. And so my dad quickly put us into sports when we were younger. I think like a lot of people, it's that soccer when you're just like 3, 4, 5 years old, right? And we instantly we're on the field playing, and my dad said he saw something in me that he hadn't seen any of the other kids. And that was I literally took the ball from my teammates and even scored on my own goal constantly because all I wanted to do was to score and compete. I didn't know the rules, I didn't understand, but I just had this like effort. And my dad tells me that story and he's like, that's how I knew you were different. A lot of the kids worried about, like, oh, what's the snack afterwards? Or, hanging with their friends or picking flowers and grass, which I'm sure that happened too. But in my mind, it was like the second he put me out there, like this instinct just kicked on naturally of just like wanting to compete. From there, that age is you're a little too young to do softball for sure. And the fear of getting hit in the face from throwing and stuff takes a little bit of time to progress. So I end up obviously playing softball, but then another love that I actually had growing up in Indiana was basketball. So I played basketball as well, and then got into volleyball a little bit, but I just wanted to compete all the time, all year round. So I did.
And it's interesting that you talk about that drive that you just kind of had as a small child, because I end up talking a fair amount about motivation styles, specifically in adulthood and that relationship with what drives you. What was what was your motivation at like youth sport?
Oh, I think I just loved competing. Like, honesty, even in elementary school, we had track and field day. Like, a lot of people had track and field day maybe at the end of the school year. And it was my favorite day of the whole year. Like, I won every single event. Like, I was the runner. I had won, I think, what, like 5 years in a row, like that first place for the 100, 200-meter sprint. I got involved in every single thing I could. And that was like the day. Like, I would think about that day as soon as it happened and talk to my dad about it and prep and how we're going to train and all this kind of stuff in elementary school. So I think my motivation was I loved winning and competing. And when I was good at something, I knew it and I just kept attacking it. I think some of it was came naturally, to be honest. Like I just felt like I had that drive. Like I know nature versus nurture. Like my father definitely ingrained that with me, my mom as well. But there's something about like that's all I cared about as a kid because maybe it was the gratitude I got from it and the like praise, but I think I just truly loved putting myself out there and winning.
I think it's interesting that in everything, all the source material, all the articles that I read about you leading up to this interview, you credited your dad with so much of your motivation. What do you think he did as the parent of someone he knew was dedicated and determined? What do you think that he did as a parent correctly to foster that in you?
I love that you asked this question because a lot of people ask that to my dad. I'm a Marine, a professional athlete, done a lot, and my sister's in law school and is just an absolute stud as well. So people come to my parents, both my mom and dad, and they're like, "What is your secret?" And it's so funny to hear my parents' reaction, and they're like, I don't know. Like I don't know if I have a secret, right? Like there's no secret sauce, secret recipe, but I will say what I think that my mom and dad taught me, but really my dad. My dad was a little bit younger, so when I was born, he was about I think he was 24, 25 when I was born. So he was a little bit younger, and I think his parenting style was just truly being himself. And so I saw his love for sport and getting after it and training and working himself physically and mentally that I just naturally wanted to be like him. I also think there's times when my dad's baseball card would get sent in the mail and kids would ask my dad to sign it and I just looked at to him like he was like the biggest like hero there ever was. And naturally as my coach, you just listen to him with a different relationship. However, and Dad, I know you're listening to this because you listen to every single podcast. It was never perfect. And there was times when people around me and my father would literally have to break us up in softball practice and stuff because we went head to head at each other and we would fight. And there was times when we couldn't separate our relationship as father and daughter and coach and athlete. Like there's times when that carried home and there's times when I would perform bad and it was an hour in the car that was silent. So by no means do I think, Dad, I love you more than anything. Like, was it perfect? But I think that he was authentically himself and doing the best he could, and the way that he was also taught from his father and like generations and stuff such as that. What I will say I noticed between my parents was the fact that they were always hard on me. And I see this in culture, and I say this lightly, but I also say this directly. We kind of see this participation effort out there of like, oh, you signed up, like everyone gets a trophy. And I will say, like, my parents, while that was important, were very honest with me of saying, like, no, you failed. Like, no, you didn't do good. Like this is not good. And being honest with me about that. So in order to win, you also have to be able to lose and take that for what it is at face value. So I do think that was a part of it too, was yeah, I knew how to win and be successful, but they were not shy when saying like, your team didn't win, you didn't perform well. Here's why. Let's work on getting it better. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you good job and tell you what you want to hear because you didn't.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about athlete motivation and what kind of drives you as you progress in your relationship with your sport, I mean, parents put you in sport, but like it may not be a success. It may not be a great fit for like the specific sport that you're in, or it may not be like the way that your parents approach it just may not be the way that you approach it. And
Yeah.
so, what do you think worked with your parents and your relationship with sport? Like, why do you think it stuck the way that it did?
Honestly, because of both of them. So the roles that they had was my dad was my coach, and in softball specifically, basketball not so much, but he was there. I was the one that was training with him every day, staying late hours with him, going to the gym from an early age, lifting weights, that kind of stuff. He was good cop, bad cop when he needed to be, and my mom was that supportive. I love you no matter what. You did great, honey. I'm here. And why that matters is because when I failed and my dad couldn't separate the two and I couldn't separate the two from honestly feeling like I was the biggest disappointment to him, my mom was there to welcome me with open arms and be in the stands and didn't have to take on that role. So the two of them as a team knew exactly what role they needed to be in at what time. And it was funny when me and my dad would fight, we each ran to my mom. And I'm like, Mom, Dad did this. And he's like, well, your daughter. And, so it was funny to see that dynamic of, I know it hurt my mom because my mom was an athlete throughout high school. She was a very athletic woman, like keeps in shape. And I think it did hurt her not being as involved and she wanted to and she tried. And she just couldn't at the time because that's not what I needed. I needed her to be the role that she was of that supporter. Like you did good no matter what. And when you didn't, cry to me and be emotional and be a female and know that I got you and I love you no matter what because I wasn't always getting that from my father. Now on the flip side, there was times when my dad and I would gang up on her and be like, you don't understand our routine, Mom. So I remember just a quick story. I remember us like my dad and I had a routine. Like we woke up at this time. This is the breakfast we got. This was the music we got. Here's how we, show up to the ballpark and everything. And my mom would sometimes come along and like mess up our whole routine. We're like, Mom, you woke us up too early because you had to get ready for too long and you don't like the breakfast I want and you're talking in the car when dad and I are silent and getting prepped. So I know she definitely felt that. Mom, I'm sorry for that. But anyways, going back to what you said, I think it was that teamwork. It was, hey, this is our role and this is what's going to keep Riley like successful and keep our family successful. And they executed it flawlessly.
I feel like the impact of parents in youth sport is really a difficult balance.
Mhm.
And if you do it wrong as a parent, you truly like derail your child's success, whether you're trying to or not. It sounds like your parents did, I mean, an incredible job. I'm looking at the notes that I have written down for you, and like obviously they instilled something in you early that has led to some massive success, and I'm excited to talk about it. So let's move forward into college. What was your first experience with the Marine Corps? Um, I mean, I know what it is, but what was it like meeting Alana?
Meeting Alana for bobsled.
Mhm.
So I got to George Washington University, and on the softball team, there was one jersey that was retired. So you automatically knew that name because we didn't have a lot of super famous alumni on the GW softball team. And you hear the name Alana Myers Taylor, and you see, on social media or on the Olympics, you see this big name of, a woman who played softball at the exact same place that I did, but went on to do amazing things and be an Olympian. And that's every, I think, kid's dream growing up initially. Well, at least mine and what I talked about was like, I want to be an Olympian. Like that's the first thing you hear about. And you're like, yeah. Um, and so when I felt like I had this connection with her without even knowing her was really special because, we played softball for the same school. Automatically, that's something. And then when I got to meet her, it was an incredible experience. It was really surreal. I've noticed in two ways. Sometimes we put people on pedestals. I know I do that to my father. We do that to athletes and figures. What we have to remember is they're people too that have feelings, that have thoughts, that have emotions, that fail, that succeed at the same time. But when I met her, I was just overwhelmed with like her story. She had her husband with her at the time and she had her teammate, and she was extremely humble and really willing to just like give back and speak to the girls and care about where she came from and her roots. And so when I was able to present her an award on behalf of the softball team, I kind of almost could envision myself like her in a sense, right? Like if she did it, so could I. She was a softball player. I was too. She's really big, fast, and powerful. Okay, so am I. And so I just remember feeling really comfortable initially, just seeing her and meeting her. Little did I know, fast forward like several years, I would be teammates with her, competing alongside of her. But I definitely was really impressed with the type of athlete that she was. A little bit of shell shock initially, and then realizing, we're all just great competitors, and she has a great story that I'm excited to be a part of.
So what happened chronologically first? Your introduction to the Marine Corps or that in with the bobsled?
The Marine Corps.
Okay,
So all of this happened in college. None of it was in high school.
right.
Obviously, I got my softball scholarship right after my freshman year, so I was pretty young. So I knew I was going there, but even Alana wasn't really on my radar then. I got to George Washington, not even thinking I also wanted to join the Marine Corps either, because I never saw a woman in uniform, let alone a Marine Corps officer that was a female. So again, never on my radar. What was on my radar was going to George Washington, getting a top education, maybe finding a way to work for the government or somewhere in DC, because that's where I was going to school. So I kind of maybe had an idea. Roughly 2 to 3 weeks on getting on a college campus. I'm 18 and I'm thinking I'm like the coolest thing ever walking around in my sports gear. I'm like, yeah. And I met a Marine recruiter. I still remember him to this day, 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, attractive male that was just fit. And he instantly struck a conversation with me about being on the softball team. And again, thinking I'm really cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm a softball player, this, that, and the other. And little did we know, obviously, with shared interests, he was a college athlete. We started talking about how as a Marine officer. One thing led to another, and I just found myself really intrigued in the conversation because a lot of what he said that the Marine Corps had to offer was similar to all the things that motivated me in the sports realm, right? Hey, you get to be a servant leader. You get to lead a team and lead them all around the world doing hard things. Check. That's what I was as a captain. You get to be an athlete your whole life. You get paid to work out. Like it's expected of you, and you're going to get tested on such throughout the year. Amazing. And then, hey, you get to do something that not very many people get to do as a woman. You get to step up to the plate and use the skills that you've learned through sports, through leadership, through your athletic ability, and your academics that you're getting at this top university, and impact people for the rest of your life, and be that selfless leader that is a part of that 1% of Americans that raise their hand to serve their country. And I was sold. Like it was such a God thing. I really think like God, like that opportunity and everything that came was exactly in time that it was supposed to. And it was the greatest decision of my life when I was 18, calling my parents, telling them I was going to do it. And after that freshman year of college, going to officer candidate school, our boot camp for the first time.
I saw that both of your grandfathers were in military. Which one was which one was in the Marines and which one was in the Army?
So my dad's father was in the Marines for about a year, so really short. He was a collegiate athlete. He played football at Wake Forest, had some knee issues, so he was a Marine for lit. He was forced to go to the Marine Corps. He went to boot camp, and then basically he was done. So he barely served, but he did serve in some capacity. So we did share that, but he never talked about it, and neither did my family. On the other side, my mom's dad was in the army, but he died when I was 2 years old. So I never met him. We talked about him, but we didn't talk about him. So even though both of them served in some capacity, like a lot of our grandparents in that day, the military was not a thing in my family. It's not something that we talked about that like, oh, my grandfather served. Like that wasn't a thing. Um, Nor did any of my parents or any of my parents' friends or anyone really talk about the military or have anyone that was actively serving.
What was it like to find a situation where your kind of no quit mindset led to success, elite success?
I love the way you frame this question, and there's so many that come to my mind, but two that come straight to my mind off the bat. One was my college softball journey. So, like I said, my dad was a professional baseball player. My dad played at the University of Arizona, which is a massive baseball school that was really successful in the Pac-12. And there's nothing I wanted more than to follow in his footsteps and make him proud. And I was my freshman year. I was what, like 15 years old. I had like just gotten my braces off. I couldn't drive, but I was successful. I made a really big softball team. We were traveling the whole nation. And everyone, I was playing up with people. Everyone had softball scholarships. So it was my time. I was getting recruited. I was getting scouted. It was awesome. And I had two recruiting trips that were two big name schools, the University of South Carolina and the University of Louisville. And I was like, let's go, especially South Carolina, SEC, big time school. So my dad and I went on the recruiting trips, right? And they host you and you go to the football games and you go to the basketball games and you meet the people and you can perform at a camp and you feel like you're somebody because they take you around and they show you. I'm not kidding when I say these two visits were about maybe 2 weeks apart, maybe. And I went to the University of South Carolina first. I got like I don't even know how to say it. Like my mind was just like it was everything you could think of like as a 15, 16-year-old. You're like, this is what college would look like. Like it was everything. It was everything. And they sat me down and basically were like, hey, we can basically offer you like a walk-on position. And that crushed me because I was like, one, I can't afford it. Two, like the whole point of this was to get a softball scholarship to make my dad proud. And at the time, like it was making him proud that mattered. Obviously, I wanted to keep playing, but I also knew I'm like, you get 4 years left. That's what I was told. Hey, as an athlete for women, you basically don't go past college. Like you get 4 years. And walk-ons don't really play like at all. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I go to school here, I'm never gonna play. Even though this is a big dream school, like it's not what we lined up, and it broke me. It broke my heart, right? Like you bought the gear, you bought all this stuff, you had this great time. We're calling my mom back at home and my sister, and that was like heartbreak. And then 2 weeks, I go to the University of Louisville, close to home. My grandma lives in Louisville, another big time school, very competitive conference. Um, and same thing, incredible time. I loved it. And they offered me, I think, I don't know, like 5 or 10%, which was basically like books. So when you're 15, 16 years old, and you feel like this is something you've dreamt about truly was to be a college softball player and two schools back to back like treat you, give you all the goods and then like crush you like that was devastating. Like I was broken. But to answer your question, I didn't let that stop me. And I think a lot of people might have there just like given up and instantly it almost made me work harder. Not because I'm going to prove them wrong, because I didn't know at the time, but God was closing doors so other ones could open. And we kept on our pursuit. And I kept, getting other offers and I kept going to other places and nothing felt right until I got an email from George Washington University. I didn't even know they were a Division I school, to be honest. I had no idea where it was located. I know St. Louis, maybe, because I grew up in Indiana. There's a Washington. Looked them up and I was like, all right, like we might as well. It's in DC. And we took a trip. They watched me play. the game they watched me come to, I hit a home run, and it just like all the things led up. And we went to school there. And while it wasn't the South Carolina, Louisville, big time school football experience, it felt right. And I was then able to accept that scholarship, go to George Washington, compete at a great conference, win a conference championship, and get a top level education. And so that's where it's that grit of like, I have to keep going. I have to keep fighting through this. And like, praise God that both of them said no, because I wouldn't be where I was today. I wouldn't have met Alana. I wouldn't have met the Marine, right? Like there's so many things that would not have happened from that moment forward if I wouldn't have waited and just kept my head in the fight and just kept pushing on. And then, you know, one other thing I'm going to tell you about that was a little bit more recently was in this past World Championships in bobsled. Real quick to set up the scene, I knew I was going to be going on deployment. I knew my season was going to look a little bit funky. At the time, I was ranked fourth out of 3 spots for girls to go to World Championships. One of my teammates got hurt. It opened up a spot. I got the call to compete in World Championships. I had a week to get myself and all my equipment to Germany, and we did it. And I was like, yes, like this is a dream again to compete back-to-back World Championships. It's top 25 in the world. My parents flew out. My dad had never been to Germany before. They're sitting there right in the front row, and I'm like ready. And I was struggling in practice with this track. Like I was having not every run, but out of what my 6 practice runs, I crashed like 2 or 3 times, which was very odd. I was like, man, like what's going on? But I'm like, it's fine. Just iron out the kinks. I've did it a couple times. Like we're good to go. Come race day, you get a total of 4 heats if you make top 20. So top 25 sleds get 3. And then for that last and final heat, it's only top 20. My parents are in the stands. I got people watching from all over. You know, I raised all this money. I had all the support behind me. First heat, I crash. The very last curve, but I still crash. I'm like, dang, okay, whatever, shake it off, get your head back in the game. Go the next heat. It's 2 heats a day. Go in, same spot, crash again. So I ended the day on back-to-back crashes, which you're going 80, 90 miles an hour. You hit your head, smacked on the ice. You're discombobulated. Your skin is ice burning. My teammates like freaking out behind me, not feeling good. And on my first showing in World Championships for this year, I had back-to-back crashes. And I'm like, what is going on, right? So again, you regroup, you rally, you know, you take care of yourself. Well, then I got the news that my teammate that was with me was so hurt she wouldn't be able to go on the next day. Devastating, broke me. They gave me, you know, a teammate to step up, and, you know, they're pumping me up. They're like, you got this, get sleep, regroup, refocus. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I was sitting in 19th, 20th, like right on the cut, or 19, 20, 21, like right on the cusp of making it or not. So I had the 3rd heat and I had to perform well in this 3rd heat. I have another teammate behind me. I'm like, all right, let's go. And guess what happened? I crashed in the exact same spot again. Now, this means I don't get across the finish line. I don't get to see my parents in the stands. I don't get to see the 200 people and celebrate and cheer anything. Like I am walking out like it's terrible. I end up making the 20th spot by like 300ths of a second. And I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is God. Cause I'm very, you know, I'm very, very religious. And I'm like, all right, it all leads up to this. It's grit. It's determination, Riley. Like you failed, you failed, you failed. I have the whole country of Germany literally they're cheering for me. And I'm not even in first place. I'm in 20th to get down without a crash. I have the commentators. I have everybody. I have coaches. I'm like, people are trying to help me. They're like, you got this. You got this. You got this. And I'm like, yes, I do. Like, stay positive. Like, come on. Like, I'm almost broken, but I'm not yet. And guess what happens? I go down. And I don't even crash at that spot. I crashed 2 corners before. And I barely cross the finish line. My teammate, you know, she's jacked up. I just had 4 crashes in a row. I don't get across that finish line. I don't get to see my family. I don't get to see my stands. Instead, I had to get taken off to the little like hospital tent to get evaluated for concussions. And I'm all over the place. And I was broken. I am known now as a first person in history to have crashed 4 times in a row in World Championships. It never happened before. Like, talk about that history. And it, again, swear it broke me. And every part of me wanted to quit. Every part of me was like, I'm over this. I'm like, get me out of here. I can't do this anymore. Like, I lost it. My head hurts. It's not worth it. And it took me like a day or two, and I was just like extremely depressed. And I looked myself in the mirror, I prayed on it, and I said, Lord, like, you called me here, you placed me here. This is a part of your journey, this is a part of your plan. And if anything, this can teach myself and everyone else mental toughness. This is one of the hardest things I have to do. I'm going to get back and I'm going to attack again. And I fly back to the United States. I go back, and the next thing you know, I'm competing back again on our home track. And didn't crash, which was great. Didn't have my best results, but I finished, and I finished my season as strong as I possibly could, with myself leaving for Iraq 2 weeks later. So all this to say, I wish it was that good story. I wish I could give you that little piece of me that's like, it all worked out and there was a happy ending because I kept my head down and I worked hard. And that didn't happen. And so what is it in me that keeps going is it's that fight. I can get knocked down and knocked down and knocked down. And it's about how can I respond and how am I going to get up? And this isn't just about me. It's about that grit and that fighter spirit that my father had taught me and my mother had taught me from young age. And the Marine Corps continues to instill in me.
How do you cultivate positive self-talk in a time when you are struggling? And it's easy
Our
to
head
feel,
is
it's
our
easy to
worst.
be like, I have grit, I have determination when things are going well and when you have a regimented training schedule. But when you're failing and you are
Yeah.
not finishing things the way that you expected to, the way that you planned to, how do you keep going?
The negative self-talk is there, and it creeps in, and it creeps in fast, and it's a spiral. And I'm able to recognize it quite quickly. I'm able to recognize the bad habits and the thoughts that I think the devil wants to tell me that I'm not enough, that I won't be able to get out of it, that I'm unworthy. And that's my biggest thing is I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. That's something that is my key enemy that I have to fight off constantly. And when that happens, truly for me, I have to surround myself with my faith, and I have to be more plugged into worship music and to the church and my friends and family, my tribe, I call them, and I need to be surrounded by it. So sometimes that positive self talk isn't me talking to myself. It's people talking to me. It's the Lord working in me and reminding me that's like, Riley, you are perfectly made and created. Like, this was a part of the plan. Like, you are enough. Listen to who I say you are and not who your mind or your thoughts, the devil says who you are. And then it's my teammates and my best friend and, my boyfriend and all these people that are like, Riley, like, we got you. Like, it's okay. Speak to us. And what I've learned is the more we hold those negative thoughts in, the more power they have because then it's like a secret and it just eats at you and eats at you. And I've noticed when I'm able to just unleash it all, I pray about it, I speak it out loud, I tell it to my parents, my boyfriend, my friends, and everything. It doesn't have as much power and grip and control on me. And then I can start getting that narrative out of my head and feeding in these positive sources of everyone else. And I rely really heavily on them. But to me, I have to do things that aren't natural in that time. I can't sit in bed and not talk to people and watch Netflix. I can't um, shut everyone else down and like have a bad attitude. I can't refuse to eat because, quote, I don't deserve it, which is something that like I've done in the past and it's a terrible habit. I have to force myself to be a light. I have to force myself to talk to Christ, remind what he says to me. And I like to collect my cookie jar and go into all the positives and successes that I have and known if I've gotten out of the situations in the past, I'm going to get out of this one and I'm going to be better for it. And there's always something that it teaches me. And at the very least, it teaches me how strong I am because grit isn't just given, it's a choice every single day, every single second in that moment. And when you hit rock bottom, because there's other times in life when I've absolutely hit rock bottom, um, it's a choice. Are you going to get out of bed? Are you going to choose to smile today? Are you going to choose to love yourself? Are you going to choose to love others? And some days that choice is much harder to make than not. But I know the right thing, and I've conditioned myself by doing it so much that it's become a habit. And a habit is easier to lock into and follow than to retreat and fall back on behavior that you're not always used to doing.
I love the quote that's like, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase this, but it's like you've gotten through 100% of the hardship that you've been presented with so far.
Yeah.
And I think that's just like exactly what you're saying right now. I mean, it doesn't even matter if you outsource that positivity.
Hmm.
As long as it hits home, you will be able to accomplish and get out of that rut.
Yeah, and I will tell you, there are things that are natural endorphins that I've learned that works for me, and it might be different than everyone else. But my main thing is working out. If I'm working out, I just feel it. There's positive endorphins or stuff that comes out like I accomplished something. So maybe not in my sport, maybe it's on a run, maybe it's moving weight and exercising, but there's always something that I can do that's like, all right, get back in it. Come on. Like you know what you need to do. Surround yourself by your right people. Go get your workout in, go focus on the things that you can. And that's another thing too. Maybe it's not the most healthy habit in the world, but when something in my world is crashing, I can always shift focus onto one of the other aspects of my life and pour into that at the time, to kind of distract my mind to help make this seem like it's not the end of the world because it's just one bucket.
When your coping mechanism is working out and you surround yourself with Team USA, like representing Team USA and representing the Marines, which are both inherently incredible workout experiences. When there's trouble in paradise in those two aspects, how do you switch your relationship with working out, with being athletic?
Yeah, so a great example was like I broke my foot at the beginning of last season and I couldn't work out. It was terrible. Literally, we were going into team trials, and I shattered my foot and was in excruciating pain. And I'm sitting there in a boot while everyone else I'm watching just get after it. It's like my dream was just like falling apart. Um, and I couldn't work out. I had to find other ways. And for me, this is actually when I wrote my children's book that's coming out in January. I was like, all right, shift focus, Riley. This is taken away from you. You're not able to train, you're not able to work out, you're not able to compete, and you're not able to do marine stuff. Okay, if that's a way, then this opens up an opportunity instead of making an excuse and being like self-pity. I'm like, well, now I have time on my hands. What's something I've always wanted to do? And I had it before I turned 30. I will write a book. Now, I'm 27 now. I wrote it when I was 26. I'm like, well, I guess I might as well throw my effort and look into doing this. Now, I get it. Not everyone's this way because I'm absolutely psychotic when it comes to these things. But the essence of it is like if things are taken away, you can look at it as two things. You can look at it as everything's crumbling around you and be in self-preservation mode, or okay, things are being taken away from me, so now I have more free time, and how can I use this time efficiently to better myself? And that's essentially what I did.
When you were trying out in Colorado in 2020 for Team USA, what were your hopes? I mean, were you hoping that you would make the team? Were you hoping that it would just be a really cool experience?
I thinking back, I remember when I showed up to that, I honestly just wanted an experience. I wanted to see how I stacked up to athletes around the world. Because again, you're going to a sport you've never done before. You can't really have expectations, to be honest, because you're like, I don't know who these people are. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just here because I was selected and I've checked enough of the boxes to get to this point. And I wanted to inspire people. My very first Instagram post when I recreated Instagram was me about to leave for this. And I remember like making it and I remember saying, like I'm about to embark on this journey. I have no idea what's about to come of it, but I'm putting myself out there essentially and I'm trying. And it was me just trying to try something new, put myself out there, have an experience. I mean, to try out for Team USA or even be around that caliber of coaches and athletes, I was like, done. Like I will show up every single time, um, just to try. But no, I mean, I think being the competitor in me, everyone's like, I want to make the team, like I want to be good enough. But truly, if I would have talked to you right before and you're like, all right, Riley, like what's like what we consider a success versus failure coming back from this, I truly would have said, giving it everything I have and seeing if this is a place for me or not, and making memories out of an experience. And I was able to do that, and it worked out. Even if they never called me back, I don't think that meant I wouldn't have failed either. It would have been the same thing. I put myself out there. I tried. I had fun. I met amazing people, and I didn't have it. So I think I'm try not to be so result oriented, because sometimes that doesn't allow you to accomplish the goals that you want, and it doesn't allow you to take really advantage of the situation that's going on around you.
When we're looking at a sport that is not NCAA sanctioned, what
Yeah.
parts of your softball experience translated into bobsled?
That's a really good question. Normally I'm not asked that. Normally I'm asked how the military goes. So I like this. I definitely think in general, the concept of teamwork, obviously, you're learning how to be a team and balance academics. And so I guess that's the biggest thing. In college, you're full-time athlete at GW, you have mandatory study hall hours. You're expected to get top GPAs. I finished with a 3.7 or and higher, which I was really proud of. But that was a big split. And hey, you're an athlete when you're an athlete, and you're a student when you're a student, and you got to be able to pursue both. Oh, then by the way, I was working two jobs on top of it to like have my own money to be able to survive. And it taught me really time management and time balance and how to not let all of these intersect with each other. And so now being an athlete for Team USA, I don't have enough money and resources to do this by myself. So I have to have a full-time job. Well, that full-time job happens to be the Marine Corps, which is 24/7 nonstop all the time. And then, I wrote my own book. Like I competed in a pageant. I do community service. I'm also a girlfriend. I'm also a daughter. I also want to do fun things and get out, and all that stuff. So I think what college, I guess, taught me in a way is how to be multifaceted and how to do all the kinds of things that I like to do while still being an athlete and knowing what to do and when to do it. And what comes first in my life right now always is the Marines. But what is a close second is my workouts. If I don't get my workout in for the day, I am mean and you don't want to be around me and I'm nasty. So I think that's also something that it taught me is, time management, but know what you need to get your body right to be able to function in the other assets of your life.
What does being a Team USA bobsled pilot entail?
So there's two positions for women. There's a pilot and a brake woman. And it involves, as a pilot, you being able to drive and navigate every single track around the world. So every single track looks different. As a pilot, it also means that you're responsible for the sled, equipment, and crew. That is your sled. That is your responsibility to make sure that it has maintenance, the person behind you safe, and to handle all the logistics of it with a lot of responsibility comes a lot of other things that not a lot of people always want to do. So, as a bobsled pilot, I'm in charge of, planning my season, memorizing the tracks, going on track walks, doing a little bit extra of things here and there to make sure that me and my teammate is successful in what we do. Now, absolutely, it's a 50-50 partnership, but that doesn't mean that the responsibility and the finances and the roles are 50-50. So I see my partner as an equal, and it's her call as much as it is mine on all these decisions and things. But what's required of us definitely is a little bit different in what we're expected to do.
When you're looking at working so closely with this other person for not only success or a podium finish, but your safety.
Mhm.
Rather infrequently do I speak to athletes who are so close to very physical harm. I mean, it's
Mhm.
normally like a football player or a soccer player. Every once in a while, I'll interview someone like from extreme sport, like the X Games, which is so cool, and they have an insane personality. It's awesome. When you need to be in this exact flow state, not only for yourself, but for and with another person, how do you accomplish that?
It's one of the hardest things in bobsled as a pilot is knowing that you're responsible for the life of someone behind you. And I mean life. They, as the brakeman position, start with you, right? And they're that turbo boost and they give you everything they got. And not to mention all the work that goes in prior to the race, right? The prep, the hours, the training. But then their head is down and they're holding on for dear life, trusting you with everything that they have. And in situations like I talked about earlier, when you crashed, they did nothing wrong. They didn't deserve it. They didn't know it was coming some of the time. And they get the brunt of it, to be honest, because I can kind of creep, like my legs are creeped in a little bit under the sled, but they're completely out and exposed. it's something that's be taken extremely seriously. It's something that as a pilot, that person, like I said, is 50-50, and their responsibility and what they say is in order to get yourself in the right zone, you just have to realize the severity of what you're going to do. And I say that in a good way. I'm nervous before every single run. Your body doesn't know the difference between nervousness and excitement, which is great. And you need to utilize that and study, how the mind operates. But you need to never not be nervous. And woe is the people that are like, yeah, like it's whatever, I got this. And I was like, you should always, always have that little bit of you that your heart's beating a little bit because you know the severity of what you're about to do. But you need to find coping mechanisms to trust and not be on the line and being worried about that. When it's time to go, it's time to go. And it takes that partner that looks at you and is like, hey, we got this. Don't worry about me. Like, I'm behind you. I got you no matter what happens. We ride or die. And it's that chemistry that allows you to kind of switch that off temporarily and be like, okay, I need to focus ahead and I can't focus behind me. No athlete that is looking behind them is ever very successful. You have to be forward focused and on what's coming and what's next in anticipation to be able to make those quick decision calls, especially when you're going 90 miles an hour. The flow state is different for every person. I'm someone who, the more nervous I get, the more I need to talk. Some people hate me because they're like, I'm nervous. I need to clam up and be quiet and leave me alone. And I'm like, no, I talk, talk, talk. Like I said, I have to get it out. When I get it out, it's good. I'm vibing. Um, but all this to say to like wrap up your question in one sentence, you have to have, no matter how many times you've been doing the sport, the track will always have the final say. You are never in 100% complete control, and you need to know that at any time that danger is there. So your body and mind needs to be alert of what's able to come, but also find some kind of coping mechanism to not let that fear turn, or the nervousness or excitement turn into fear, and let it stay as excitement. Like, I got this, let's go. My heart rate's up because I'm locked and I'm focused because what I'm about to do is something serious.
I mean, that's a pretty easy kind of segue into your time with the Marines, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, how does the focus that you've cultivated through bobsled transition into your work with the Marine Corps?
Oh, they go hand in hand, which is the beauty. I felt it first in the Marine Corps because remember, I was a Marine before I ever even stepped into bobsledding. So when I first went to military training, I never touched a weapon. I didn't know what to expect. I had zero military experience. And they throw you in, you get a live weapon, you get blanks, but it's still live. If you shoot someone at close distance with a blank, like things are going to happen. Um, and I quickly was taught that you study really hard. You study, you analyze tactics, but when you're out there, you're reactive and you have to trust your training to make the proper decisions and you can't hesitate. And it's always about the team. It's the team and then it's you. You are their leader. You're a servant leader. You're there for them. Leaders eat last. So you have to be as selfless as possible, but you also have to make sure that you're the most squared away. I have to have all my ducks in a row, check it over twice, because if I don't, how can I ever take care of the people around me? That's also what I learned. You have to free your mind to be able to think of all the little things in that moment. So when I'm going down a bobsled track and things are coming at me 80, 90 miles an hour, it's similar to a military standpoint when I'm making quick decisions, when I'm simulating combat, for example, and I have to make close calls and take information as it's coming and not be emotional, but make decisions that are going to impact the lives of everybody in my team to keep everyone safe and to execute the right call. In addition, like I said, the Marine Corps has taught me grit and resiliency as well. The Marine Corps, you fail, they yell at you, they break you down, they rebuild you into who you want to be. And you can't be good at everything, essentially, that the Marine Corps asks of you. So you're going to be bad at something. And similar to that, when you crash, it's one of the worst things in the freaking world, but you get punched in the face and you're taught to get back up and go again. And not everyone has that instinct. And maybe that was from sport, maybe not, but I do think a lot of it comes from the military, that when you fail, I need to get back up and I need to attack it right over again because I'm not going to let that fear hold on to me. And it's similar in the military when you're taking reps. I failed at something. Okay, go back, analyze it if you have time. If not, get right back in the fight because you don't have time to go away and not be present in this moment. So things coming at you fast, relying on your training. And then lastly, what the Marine Corps has taught me is truly how to balance and work as a team. No one in war has ever been successful fighting and operating by themselves, ever. Truly, it's the best war fighters and people that we see were surrounded by other people, military officials or whatever, that were very sound and square and would give them feedback. And that means even feedback at the lowest level up sometimes. And you have to have the humility to be able to take that in from your men and women. On my bobsled team, I need to have the humility of, yes, it's maybe my sled. Yes, it's my money. It's my equipment that goes into it. But I need the opinions of everybody. I need the opinions of my coaches. I need the opinions of my teammates. But then, oh, I need the opinion of the maintenance. I need the people of the track workers. Hey, what do you think of this track? Right? It knocks you down a couple levels with humility of saying, like, yeah, I might be in charge. It might be my name. I might be the person that people see. But there's so many people that go into making this work that I need to make sure that I'm listening and I'm approachable to each and every one of them. And I can utilize everything that they have to offer to make myself the best, well-rounded leader I possibly can.
When so much of your life is committed to the drive and pushing forward and what's next, how do you feel satisfied?
Mm. This was a big mission of mine in college, was feeling like I was searching for something because I was having all these things, but it never felt like enough. Like it would be like, okay, I got this finally. Okay, what's the next thing? And then I got that. Okay, what's the next thing? And it was kind of like this drug of like, all right, when am I going to be pleased? And to honestly answer your question, for me, the only thing that filled that void was Jesus Christ and my love and my faith. That's the only way that I was satisfied, was having that endless love from the Lord. And that's something that I really needed in my life, let alone my athletic career. And once I found that, I have been so satisfied. In every result, world championships, finishing 20th, having the most crashes. I'm still satisfied. Praise God. Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for keeping me safe. It's this mindset shift that it gave me, that every single time it's perspective, that there's some positive way to spin on it, and God's got me and he's a good, loving father. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to fail or have trials or tribulations, but it means that I know that I'm protected and loved and things are going to be okay. And that is what satisfies me. On a different level, there's still micro things that satisfy me. And one of the biggest ones is when I have people that reach out to me saying that, I inspire them, or they ask questions about wanting to join the Marine Corps, the military, because of me, or people asking about joining the bobsled team or other things because of me. Or I have women saying, I could never be like you, this, that, and a third. I'm like, you're the same as me. Let me help you. Let me help you get there. And then you see some people that you're able to help or guide and they end up being successful. That's one of the most satisfying feelings I've ever had. There's a lieutenant out there that she reached out to me on social media. She went to officer candidate school. She ended up not making it through the first time. Um, I wrote her a note. I sent her my lieutenant bars from when I was a lieutenant, and I said, you will make this, and one day you will be able to wear these, and I believe in you, and you got this. And just offering her, just a little bit of feedback. And then as I'm deployed, I get a message and I get a photo, and she's like, ma'am, I did it. I'm a United States Marine, and here are your lieutenant bars, and I wore them. And her and I are still in contact to this day. Now, do we get to talk all the time? Like, absolutely not. But it's like, what that meant to me was just, oh, I want to help someone. I want to encourage someone. What it meant to her was probably way more, but the impact that it had on me now is way more than maybe the impact it had on her. Is that it's not about me. It's about bringing people along with me and encouraging and loving on people when they need it the most, and uplifting everyone, but in my opinion, women and people that maybe see the path that I took and are inspired to do it and end up doing it. And I can help in that process. And why that means so much to me is because I see sometimes so many women not supporting each other, or maybe putting someone else down, or, I can be the only one. And it's something about stopping. It's not about you. It's about other people. And if you truly want to leave a legacy, it's about bringing more people to the table so that they can bring more, and just multiplying the efforts.
I'm like crying right now. That was that was an incredible anecdote. What does it mean to you to represent Team USA and the United States as a whole in multiple different ways? I mean, normally when I speak to Team USA athletes, they are an athlete, and which is like certainly not to be minimized, but you are representing the United States of America in more than one way. So, what do you want people's takeaways about you to be?
I have the pleasure and honor of serving my country for the United States and wearing United States Marine and, United States Marine on one chest. And I have the ability to then put on my bobsled uniform and, represent this Team USA symbol. And it says Team USA and compete for my country. I've been asked this question so many times, and I don't think I can put it into words what it means because sometimes I can't even fathom that I'm actually doing it, to be honest. I love my country. I am a diehard patriot, and there are so many people that made it possible for me to sit here to talk to you and to do these things. There's so many women who came before me in the military that opened up that door to allow women to be where we are now. And there's so many women who fought for women's sports to be a thing and women to have a voice and to be able to represent both as a female and as, someone who just loves my country and to constantly do both is something that I still have yet to find a word that can even amplify the gratitude and gratefulness that I truly feel. It's everything. I could never ever be more satisfied than doing both of these things right now. But the legacy that I want to leave behind or what I want to be remembered by, I don't want to be remembered by my name. I don't want to be remembered by my accomplishments or my medals. I want to be remembered by the way I made people feel and being a positive impact in their life to push them in the right direction. Being a Christian, I believe my purpose here is spreading love, generosity, and leading people to Christ. And that's not by throwing the Bible at your face. That's not by pushing faith on you, but it's truly showing love and kindness and fruits of the Spirit to people and asking nothing in return. And my goal in the military and in sport is I don't need to win a gold medal. I don't even need to go to Olympic Games. In the military, I don't need to become a high ranking individual and have all these awards and achievements and be a war hero. I just want to impact at a micro level every single person I come in contact with. I want to give them love. I want to give them kindness. I want to give them guidance and advice to be able to become the best versions of themselves. And they may not remember my name. They may not remember anything, but I hope they remember the way I made them feel by showing them that and by hopefully giving a piece of myself to them to let them lead their lives and get something that they've always wanted to accomplish out of it.
What was your hope behind the children's book?
It was about inspiring young women. It all stemmed from me having these interviews. And I had someone ask me two questions. One, like, what's next, Riley? Like, I always say, you are always achieving things. Like, what's next? And that's when I verbally out loud, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, stating I want to write a book before I'm 30. And I'm like, oh gosh, now that I said it, I have to make it happen. But the flip side is through podcast after interview, I've probably done 100 already. People would ask me the same question of, did you always want to be a Marine? Or, was that a goal when you were younger in high school? And my response was no, because I never saw it. And I truly believe in the power of visualization, but now with social media, being able to see things and this, that, and the other. So writing my children's book, I wanted to go to that source of being a kid and showing somebody, not in a fake story, but in a real factual story, someone who is a female Marine, someone who is a female professional athlete, someone who now at the time will be a published author, and someone who's a pageant queen and volunteers and cares about her society, and how I can morph into all those things, saying, you should be able to visualize all these things if this is something you want to do because you've seen me do it. And maybe, just maybe, now there's girls that are 10 to 15 years old saying, I want to be a Marine when I grow up. And that is what I'm looking for. So the book, again, is something a gift that I want to give to people, especially kids, but more importantly, young girls, that they could see, oh, being a female Marine, like that's cool. And it's something that I can be. That's a thing. Oh, a professional athlete? Well, people told me I couldn't really go on past college. no, you can if you desire it, a published author. Well, I didn't major in English, and trust me, I say y'all and I say words that aren't, 100% accurate, but like, hey, you have the ability to do it. Or, even just like when I entered the pageant, like I had never done pageantry in my life. Like I called it pageant pizza. I ate a whole medium-sized Domino's pizza right before I did it. Like I wasn't about to starve myself or nothing. Um, so it's just like, again, like breaking down stereotypes, but also showing people like what's possible. And I hope my story can impact, as many, but even if it touches one, even if I can touch the life of one, it's so worth it.
When in January is that coming out?
The date is a little bit TBD, but today actually, which is so exciting, I got the final sketch of the cover of it. So my publicist gave me the final cover of what that's gonna look like, and I'm so excited. But yeah, it should be sometime in January 2025. And hoping to do, hopefully, God willing, a book tour if people will have me or something like that. Um, but I will definitely let you know for sure.
Come to Nashville.
Done.
This is Nashville behind me right now, and I I would love to add that a link to that book in the show notes of this episode. Let me check when this episode is coming out. Um, I think it's probably going to be like in the end of December, so I don't think your book will be out by the time.
It might be on pre-order.
Ooh, okay. Um, so your interview is coming out on the 11th of December. So a
Okay.
little bit early. Like I was saying, if you can give me that pre-order information, I mean, I'd love to include it.
Yeah,
Um, what's the target demographic for this children's book, age-wise?
I would say probably 4 to 7.
Okay.
It's nothing, yeah, it's nothing crazy.
And then those are all the questions I have for you. Anything that you think that I missed about telling your story? Any questions that you liked answering from other interviews that I didn't personally ask?
No, the only thing I was like wrapping up is just where people can find me, or follow if they need anything else. Or lastly, I'll throw in a clip here of how people can reach me if
Yeah.
they do, are interested in anything that I've talked about or need help or anything like that.
Yeah, I always put all of the contact information at the end of the episode. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Um, like I was saying, your episode will be out on the 11th of December. Um, if anything happens between now and then, that is super duper cool that you would like to be included in this episode. Send me a direct message on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I will catch back up to you in December. Best of luck in Baghdad. Thank you for your service. Thank you for coming on this
Yeah.
podcast episode, Riley. I was so excited to talk to you. I mean, like I have almost 100 episodes of this podcast, and everyone is so different. And like I always say like just jokingly at the end, like I'm such a fan of you for sharing your story and coming on, but like I really am a fan of yours, and I'm so thankful that you wanted to share your story on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I actually never turn down a podcast, no matter who it is. Even the people that have 3 followers, I said, if I could touch anybody, even if it's your mom, or my dad, because he listens to every single one, it's worth it. So thanks for creating a platform. Thanks for reaching out and being proactive, and thanks for allowing me to share my story. I really appreciate it.
I'm really excited to follow along with you and your journey to the Winter Olympics. I mean, that's incredible. I'm so excited for you. And I'm just really excited to put this episode together.